Welcome, friends. This is Kiki Rogers, and you are listening to Kiki's Keys to Unlocking Your Best Life. It's a weekly show that brings you stories of friends who have survived their worst and are now living their best. Welcome, listeners. We're so glad to have you. And I am joined today with a very wonderful guest. His name is Shawn Campbell. And Shawn, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
That was a very smooth intro, Kiki.
I love that song.
Yeah, yeah, and your intro itself. And
Thank you.
Totally sets the stage for your show. Awesome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have you because I know you're a social media whiz and podcast.
No, thank you.
genius.
Thank you. It was an honor, a huge honor to be here today. I was very nervous. I've been on a few shows, but I have to admit this was the most nervous I've been on a show.
I hope I make you comfortable.
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable. I'm this is really cool. I was on Wesley's show last week, and I wasn't nervous at all. I was just ready to eat.
Well, they have food. Yeah, it's a distraction.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a little more of a vulnerable show. And so
Absolutely.
I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend about it yesterday and just kind of like, okay, I got to be ready for this. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you.
And we want to thank our sponsors for sure. Definitely We Care Tucson, helping those in need getting electronics and medical supplies. You can donate directly to We Care Tucson. Sarah Sodders, luxury real estate specializing in Oro Valley. And also with the Oro Valley Homeowners, Tucson Homeowners magazines. And then, of course, Kiki Rogers, Country Financial. Thank you so much to all of my customers out there. Because of my success there, I'm able to do this. So thank you. Mm-hmm. And as we were saying, Shawn, you're here with us. You're in Tucson, live here with me. Haven't lived here your whole life, though. You've been around a bit.
Yeah, military brat. Up until I was 18, I spent most of my life outside the continental U.S. So when we moved back, it was actually a little bit of a culture shock, actually.
How old were you at that time?
18.
Okay.
Near 19. Yeah, I was very awkward my first handful of years here in college.
Yeah.
I hated college.
But you are a Wildcat graduate.
Absolutely. Wildcat graduate from the Eller School, degree in marketing.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So it only took me 5.5 years, but
so you actually have a degree that you're using towards your career.
That's I do.
Incredible.
I'm one of those weirdos.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I'm was really honored to meet you in
likewise
our networking circles.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of mutual friends that put us in connection with each other.
Yep.
As we've gotten to know each other, we've had these conversations, and it sounds like, we've all kind of gone through our own ups and downs.
Absolutely.
Which what brings us here. So share a little bit what your worst moment was.
Yeah. And again, I want to thank you for bringing me on here. At first, when you asked me to come on, I'm like, well, it's in comparison, but you said something right away that really kind of was like allowed me to, be vulnerable, and, it was bad for us, right? Whatever that worst moment is. And it was, 11 years about this time, and it was a few months, all within a few months, and each one of these, could be a whole show in itself. But I lost my job that I had for 7.5 years, and literally when you'd walk in, you'd see my picture on the door. I was pretty established, doing pretty well there, and again, it was a whole nother debacle. Whether I was responsible for it or not, it's another story. And then I was, just ended a relationship that I thought it was going to be, more than just it was. And then my father passed away all within a few months. You know, and it was blow after blow. And when you're sitting there and just kind of wondering, in that whirlwind of those 3 or 4 months, your self-confidence and who I was as a man. It's like, I'm not a father that I should be. I don't have a job. I'm living with my parents. And
your kids were quite young at that point.
Yeah. And it was important for me to always try to be an example. Even though I wasn't there at home with them, I still always wanted to be an example of what a guy should be, right?
Right.
And to go from, at the beginning of that year in 2013, I just turned 42, and I thought this was going to be the best year ever. And then in a few months, it was just gone. All those goals and aspirations, and, you're just like, what happened?
Right.
Yeah.
Because your attention's on all the other stressors that are going on.
Yeah.
And I know from my own growth, I've been very mindful about not stacking problems, feeling like I'm, oh my gosh, this went wrong, and then I was running late, and then this bank account is bad, whatever.
Right.
And then go, I can't breathe through that, and trying to take our problems and handle them one at a time.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's really hard to do that.
Yeah, especially when they're, not the day-to-day problems, but the big, life-changing issues, and I wasn't past losing my job before, I ended a relationship, and then after that, it was just like boom, boom, boom.
It's one loss after another.
Yeah.
And so you're grieving. Mm-hmm. You're grieving your job.
Yeah.
You're grieving your feeling of self-worth.
Yeah.
And worth to your family.
Yeah.
You're grieving your family and what you thought it would be.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, all the other issues that come as a result from each one of those, again, I could talk about each one of these in a separate show in itself.
Right.
And so, and to go from that to where I am today, is a very, a gritty process where I really had to tune everybody out and just kind of start with a clean slate.
Okay.
And not, it wasn't like I was hanging out with bad people. It wasn't, but I need a clean slate altogether.
So describe what that looks like.
First and foremost, I realized that from the time I was 16 to 42 for 26 years, I was continuously in a relationship. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who I was.
I get
I
that.
had no idea who quote unquote Shawn Campbell was.
Right. Yeah. You're attached to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was kind of part of who you were. It's like who I'm with. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Who I'm dating, or, I was married for a while, and it was always kind of a part of being a dude, what I mean? And so not being...
Well, I don't know what you mean, but I hear you. I hear you.
Well, I'm sure women, may feel the same thing.
The pressure of being the perfect mom.
Right.
The guilt, mom guilt. I get it.
Yeah. And so I didn't see nobody for over a year. I had to get comfortable being myself and realize, like, I don't need to be with somebody to be good, to be complete, so that was the first step.
That's a big hurdle.
Yeah.
How did you come to accept that for yourself?
I don't know when the epiphany or the moment exactly was, but I just knew I needed to clean house and start fresh. I put myself in a bunch of different books and kind of started with my own mindset and tried to readjust that. And by no means did this happen overnight. No means that I wake up.
That's Kiki's key number 5. Nothing meaningful happens overnight.
Yeah, I mean, this was several months later in that year, before I finally kind of brushed myself off, got myself out of this pity party. And, I think we all need to go through that. But, it took a while. Absolutely, yeah.
I think you made a great point there. When we're in that moment and we are feeling our worst, we cannot back out of it. We have to go through it.
I love that, yeah.
To get on the other side.
Yeah, you kind of have to embrace it. You kind of have to, like, embrace that pain and, realize that, we need this for growth, and just accept it and just, do your best. And, again, by no means am I trying to give advice. This is just kind of my own journey through it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I really had to kind of, I relied on that mentality. I was always involved in sports and stuff like that. I was looking in the mirror and said, okay, how would I approach this as, an athlete or somebody, so it took a lot of, like, mental practice and getting into good habits again. quite frankly, I've been drinking since I was 16. I lived in Germany as a kid. So
Right.
I was like, I got to cut this out. I got to eat better. I got to get outside and get active again.
Sounded like you started to care for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds like
I
a
never
lot of
thought
self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're doing that, you can have a lot of time, in your head.
Right.
And so I became my biggest cheerleader.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great breaking point. We're
Yeah.
going to go and give some love to our generous sponsors.
Mhm.
And when we come back, we're going to hear what Shawn did from there and how life is now. And if you're feeling similar or have anything to share, you can call us at 520-790-2040. Welcome back, friends. This is Kiki's Keys to Unlocking Your Best Life. And we are here live at KVOI 1030 AM The Voice. And I am with my special guest, Shawn Campbell. Welcome back again, Shawn.
Thank you. That first part wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
Bad.
I think I kept it together okay.
You did great.
Okay.
But she really opened up. And I'm going to talk traditional gender roles.
Yeah.
And you all know that inclusivity is very important to me, so I am stereotyping. But you really did tap into some hard feelings as a man.
Yeah.
And your father being in the military as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
How did you come to grips with that part?
Oof. Well, I'm going to share, I think I was going to share this part, but one of the big parts that really kind of hit me was one of our last conversations I had with my dad.
Okay.
And, my dad had gone through about 2.5 years battling a rare form of blood cancer. And a few weeks before he passed away, he's apologizing to me for not being, the father that I should have and the man that should be in my... And I'm like, dude, you're the toughest SOB these last two. I'm like, I would have kicked the bucket years ago.
Really?
And he's apologizing for me. And I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, so no, then that was a conversation that I had that I keep in my head all the time.
Share with us a little bit about your dad.
20 plus years in the military and the typical military dad, right? I got in trouble. I was, old school, discipline, which I appreciate, and I think it really helps me out in my, my work ethic. I've always been the first one in, last one out type of guy.
Great.
I've always been the guy that's, no matter what job I've had, I want to do it right. I want, you know what I mean? I take pride in what I do. And that was the example that he showed me from day one. I remember when he got me a summer job in my sophomore year in high school, and I was all mad at him because I just wanted to hang out with my girlfriend.
Right.
And, I was like, I got to get up to catch the bus to go to this, Army base. And, and then by the time I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, he's already gone.
Yeah.
He's already gone. And then I get back about 5:36 and he's coming home after me. I'm like, I got nothing to complain about.
But that takes some maturity to recognize that.
I recognize it in those first few days.
Wow.
It's like, here I am. I got a job in Germany, and the dollar was, 3.5 to 1, so
really?
$10 did a lot of damage.
And you could buy beer when you're underage.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he instilled in me a lot of, qualities and, that I have today. And, it definitely helped me through that, through that period, and to kind of get myself back up and brush myself off. And I'm like, what am I complaining about? Here's my dad that just went through this battle. And, yes, this was tough for me, but he overcame it, and, he fought from, the very last day. And, and the worst thing I could do is give up, because I'd be giving up on him and giving up on everything he instilled in me. So,
wow, that is really good. The worst thing you could do is give up.
Yeah, the worst thing I could have done was just kind of, settled for, something less, and and look at, in a few years afterwards, got my own business and completely self-reliant, achieving all these dreams. I never thought I'd be in the studio, 2 weekends in a row with yourself and with last week. And, I've had my own radio show. I've got a podcast and working with a wonderful marketing agency. And, I got it
Tell
made.
us about your podcast and
Got
how
it
people
made.
can listen.
It's on the Shawn Campbell show. It's affiliated with the agency I work with now, with the CMO there at CS Design Studios. We have a couple of different series. One we talk marketing, the marketing corner, and then other one it's kind of a sports related to marketing and business as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you help other people with their podcasts.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I got the pleasure to be on Gordy
Gordy's,
Siebert's podcast.
That was a good episode.
Networking
that
Stars.
Was a good
Thank
episode.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great interviewer too.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful setup there, just like similar to what we have here at Bustos. Yeah, that was quite neat.
Yeah, we don't have the fancy microphones like this, but it's close.
I don't have the Atari games. Okay, let's be honest. I want to go back and play Galaga.
Yeah, anytime.
I would never get any work done there.
Yeah.
But so life is going well now.
Yeah.
What do you do today to continuously remind yourself to not give up?
Don't be afraid of looking back at that moment. Don't be afraid of. One of the biggest things for me was actually giving myself a little pat on the back every once in a while and say, look, you've come this far, you've achieved all this. One of the biggest things that I think you and I both go through every once in a while is like imposter syndrome.
Yes.
It's like, what did we deserve to be in this situation?
Right.
And all you got to do is kind of take a step back, look to where you were kind of like in your low or kind of the worst days and look how much you've accomplished and realize you've earned it. You earn where you are today.
That's really well said.
Yeah.
I love how you touched on imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the story about Neil deGrasse Tyson and Neil Armstrong? They were at like awards banquet thing for scientists, and Neil deGrasse I'm saying his name probably wrong. Do you know how to say
right,
it?
yeah.
deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
He's a younger scientist, and really profound in the last 20, 30 years. But he was at this thing feeling really insecure, like he didn't belong, and he's standing in the back kind of trying to stay out of the spotlight. And he looks over, and there's an older gentleman there, and they get talking, and he's like, yeah, do you ever feel like you just don't belong in these things all the time, right? And then he goes, what's your name? Oh, Neil. So's mine. And it was Neil Armstrong.
Wow.
And Neil Armstrong and Neil deGrasse Tyson both felt like they didn't deserve to be, getting that. I love that story.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's powerful. I was just talking to a client yesterday, and we were talking about, this show and some other things, and going through that. It's a big struggle. And then some people have the opposite problem where they're a little bit too full of themselves.
Well, yes. but there's always going to be those as well.
Yeah. But I think, part of going, experiencing that is just an indication that you're still humble.
Right.
So
we're all human.
Yeah.
I find opportunity to remind myself that on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And no one's perfect for that, but you got to just not give up.
Yeah. And lastly, I think the big thing for me is gratitude.
Okay.
Being grateful for that time, being grateful for all those little things. I think whenever I am kind of in a rut today or go through the imposter syndrome thing, I just take inventory of all the things that I'm very, very grateful for. Yeah. And those, write them down. Write it down. Three things every day.
Every
that
day,
you're most
write it
grateful
down.
for when you wake up. Yeah.
Yep, that's Kiki's key one. Number one is...
Number one?
Yes,
Ooh.
Number one. If it isn't written, it doesn't happen.
Ah, I like that.
Yep, if you have a goal, you have to write it down.
Yeah.
If you want to track, you have to write it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I love you coming on and sharing your story about, what it was like before and going through those losses and those griefs and taking that time to identify yourself and what was important to you and your values.
Yeah. And it was time for me, and time for kind of me to go through that, and just, I'm just a way better person, to be honest.
That's great. And you are a very talented individual as well, and very good at what you do. I know you're not, here to plug your business or anything, but we do have an extra moment. Yeah. Share a little bit more about what services you provide and how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, at CS Design Studios, we run the full gamut. the full gamut of digital marketing, from websites, social media, SEO, Google, podcasting. Yeah, and if you know, if you ever just want to nerd out on your marketing, just give me a text.
Okay.
520-339-0259.
Say that one more time, please.
520-339-0259.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Shawn Campbell, thank you for coming on and being
thank
our
you.
guest and sharing so much, being so vulnerable and open with us. We cannot do this show without our generous sponsors. So again, we want to thank We Care Tucson. If you have any electronical devices, computers, monitors, televisions, radios, iPads, those kinds of things, cell phones, you can donate them to We Care Tucson. They have a wonderful team that helps get everything up and running and current, and then they give those laptops and devices out to those in need who can use them. And so We Care Tucson, Sarasotter's luxury real estate, specializing in Oro Valley with the Oro Valley Homeowners Magazine, and now also the Tucson Homeowners Magazine. And then, of course, thank you, Country Financial. Thank you to all of my wonderful customers there. And until next time, friends, go out there and be the best version yourself that you can be, because no one else can do it better than you. I will see you or talk to you next week at Kiki's Keys.